Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a new semester. This semester, we are going to learn about classical period in detail. Last time, we had an overview of the classical period. So we talked about when it happened, how it was different from the Baroque period, and some big ideas like balance, simplicity, clarity, and so on, right? Before we start, let's briefly review about what happened in the world outside the musical world at that time. The Enlightenment. When did it happen? Around the 18th century in Europe, especially in France, Britain, and German speaking areas. It happened at the same time as the classical period in music. So, what were the key ideas of the Enlightenment? First, reason. So, what is reason? It's instead of only trusting tradition or emotion, people started to say, "Oh, we should follow what reason says is true." In the Enlightenment, reason meant that people believed we should use our brains and clear thinking to understand the world. So instead of just following tradition, emotions, or religious leaders, they thought logic, thinking, and human intelligence were the best way to find truth and make progress. Number two, science. People wanted to understand nature through observation, experiment, and evidence. So you know about the scientist Newton. He discovered gravity by observing the apple tree, the apple falling from the tree to the ground. So he thought, why is this apple falling downwards, to the ground? And then he discovered gravity. Number three, individual liberty. Liberty means freedom. So not only kings, nobles, and the church are important, people started to think. So each person has a value and rights. So people were starting to say that we have the same rights. Not only the kings, nobles, not only the wealthy people, ordinary people has right. We have right. We have values. So what was the influence on music? Because of these ideas, the reason and science and liberty, people also wanted music to be more simple and clear, and more balanced and logical, and easier to understand and follow. So, in classical period music, we often find somewhat opposite from the Baroque period music. Well organized structures, balanced sentence like melodies, easy melodies, and clear tonality and form. So music becomes a kind of art of order and balance, not just decoration or complexity of the music in the Baroque period. And we had revolutions, right? Here, revolutions mainly means political revolutions. So let's talk about the two important examples. First, American Revolution. The American colonies fought for independence from Britain. So they said all men are created equal and stressed freedom and rights. So later they become the independent country, today's USA, right? And then second revolution we have French Revolution. That was a huge reaction against absolute monarchy and noble privilege. You know the famous slogan, liberty, equality, fraternity. So, from the French Revolution, the power of kings and nobles started to shake. So, why is this important? Because all these revolutions send the same message. It is not only a world for kings and nobles. ordinary people and colonized people also say we have rights too. So society is slowly moving from a system of only top to bottom to a system where bottom can also speak to the top. And people were seeking for the equality. So let's also talk about the influence on the music. Composers still depended a lot on kings and nobles, but the overall atmosphere changed. The overall culture changed. First, public concerts became more common because music was no longer only for the court, only for the wealthy people, only for the dukes and noble people. So ordinary citizens could also go to concerts. They could buy the tickets. Do you remember they had the public opera houses in Venice and Hamburg and so on? And themes and emotions in music slowly changed. So toward the end of the classical period and into the romantic period, we see more heroes, freedom, struggle, and human emotion. Yes, so this became very clear in Beethoven, for example, like heroic feeling. Next, one of the most important revolutions in the history, the Industrial Revolution. When did it happen? Roughly from the late 18th century to the 19th century, it began in Britain, then spread across Europe. So, what happened and what changed? First, new machines were invented. Steam engine, modern steel, and many other machines made factory work and mass production possible. We talked about what was mass production. In the factory, we can produce a lot of same things in a fast speed because it was not done by the human hands. The machines did it. So the speed was faster and the quantity more produced. And it led to new inventions related to music. The first piano, called forte piano, developed in 1700 by Cristofori, and also the tuning fork was invented to help tune instruments. So this meant instrument making improved and pianos slowly became more common. Yes, because factories manufactured piano and then more piano produced, so people bought more pianos. And then they had it in their homes. And urbanization and middle class growth. So after the Industrial Revolution, many factories were built. So many people moved to cities to work in that factories. So a new urban middle class appeared because they earned money by working at factories. Yes? So these people wanted a piano at home and they wanted to give their children music lessons and they wanted to go to concerts. So, what was the influence on the music? Piano sonatas and piano concertos, like piano music, became very popular, and music for the home, music for the salon became important. Not so big concerts like home concerts, house concerts. And composers could now earn money by publishing sheet music and by giving lessons. So the composer was not only a servant of the court anymore. Slowly, the composer became more like an artist and professional who could work with the wider public. Let's review super short one-line review. The Enlightenment. Think with reason, trust science, respect individuals. So its influence on music was order, balance, and clarity. Next, revolutions. Not only kings and nobles, people and citizens matter too. Influence on music, from court only to wider audiences, and more heroic and human themes. Next, the Industrial Revolution. Machines, factories, cities, middle class, and the piano. So its influence on the music, piano in the home, so more music education, new ways for composers to work. Before we really move on to the next chapter, let's compare the Baroque period and the Classical period with the simple keywords. Baroque, polyphony. Classical, homophony. Baroque, complexity. Classical, simplicity. Okay, I think we're really ready to move on. Today, we're going to meet one very important composer from this time, Joseph Haydn. He is often called the father of the symphony and the father of the string quartet. So, if we want to really understand classical music, he is a great place to start. Who was Haydn? Joseph Haydn was born in the village of Rohrau in Lower Austria near the Hungarian border into a poor but musical family. His father was a wagon wheel maker who liked folk music and played the harp by ear, and his mother had worked as a maid in a noble house. Haydn showed musical talent early, so at about 6 years old, he was sent to live with a relative in Hainburg, where he learned singing, violin, and harpsichord and sang as a boy soprano in the church choir. Later, he was noticed by Johann Georg Reuter, the music director of St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna, the capital city, and moved there to sing in the cathedral choir, the boy choir. But when his puberty came and his voice broke, he lost his position and lived in poor conditions, giving lessons and doing small jobs. He briefly studied with the Italian composer Nicola Porpora and taught himself composition by studying theory books and copying scores. Haydn then found work with noble families and eventually became Kapellmeister, which is the music director, for Count Morzin, where he began writing symphonies. Around 1761, he entered the service of the powerful Esterházy family, staying for almost 30 years. There, he had a good orchestra and wrote many symphonies, string quartets, and other works, gaining an international reputation and becoming friends with Mozart. After his patron, Prince Nicholas, died, the father Esterházy, Haydn received a pension and became more independent. He even traveled to London twice, where he was very successful and composed the famous London symphonies. Later, he returned to Vienna, the capital city, focused on sacred music and late instrumental works like the famous trumpet concerto and string quartets, and briefly taught Beethoven. And in his old age, his health declined and he stopped composing. And Haydn died in Vienna in 1809 at the age of 77. Let's connect Haydn to some features of the classical style. In the Baroque period, the music was often very complex, full of polyphony, so many melodies at the same time, and often kept the same mood for a long time. And in the classical period, music started to change a little bit, evolve. Especially in Haydn's music, we start to hear 1. Clear phrases. The music feels like sentences. Like, how are you? I'm fine. Thank you. And you? Like this. So often we hear something like 4 bars plus 4 bars, like a question and an answer. Yes, very clear phrases. 2. Melody and accompaniment. We call this texture homophony, right? So one main tune on top and the other instrument supported with harmony, right? 3. Balance and surprise. The structure is balanced and logical, but within that structure, Haydn loves to play with little jokes and surprises. So many people call Haydn's music is witty. So now we are going to listen for these things in one famous piece. This piece is called Symphony Number 94 in G major, nicknamed Surprise, by Haydn. Especially the second movement is very renowned, very famous. Before we listen, I want to give you 2 small tasks. Task 1, feel the phrases. But while you listen, try to feel the short musical sentences. Okay? And you can lightly tap your fingers or count. Just count in your head, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Because many of them are in 4-bar units. Task number 2. Find the surprise. There is one famous moment in this movement. Almost everyone knows it when they hear it, okay? So your job is to listen and tell me what the surprise is and how it makes you feel. Okay? Let's listen. All right, what did you notice? Did anyone find the surprise? Yes, that sudden loud chord, the forte, after the very soft, gentle melody. So the beginning was very soft, peaceful, simple, almost like a lullaby, right? And then suddenly, boom, a loud chord that you like can wake you up. Some people say Haydn did this as a joke to wake up sleepy listeners who were falling asleep, and then boom, and they wake up. Whether that story is 100% true or not, it shows something about his personality. Remember, witty? Haydn liked to play with the audience, and he often used dynamics like piano forte in a clever and surprising way. So let's go back to task number 1, phrases. Okay, this time I'll play the beginning again. When the melody starts, I want you to count 1, 2, 3, 4 in your mind for each bar. 1, 2, like this, okay? And after each 4 bars, please remember, this is first sentence, second sentence, okay? Okay, let's try again. Did you feel that the melody was in short, regular phrases, like little sentences? 4, 4, 4. That's a very typical feature of classical style. From just this one movement, we can learn a lot about the classical period music and Haydn's music. First, clear and simple melody. It's easy to remember. You can sing along. Maybe you can even hum it after class. 2, regular phrases. The music feels organized and balanced, right? It's not wandering forever. It has structure, 4 by 4 by 4 and 4, right? 3, it has dynamics for drama and humor also. The soft beginning and the sudden loud chord create a contrast, right? Soft and strong. Haydn uses this contrast for fun and to keep the listener awake, keep them focused. Number 4, music for an audience. Remember, Haydn was writing for a prince and his guests, but also later for public concerts for many more audiences. So the music needed to be pleasant, clear, and entertaining. So in many ways, this movement is a perfect example of early classical period taste. Order and balance, but also lightness, charm, and humor. A symphony is, in short, a large piece of music for orchestra, usually in several movements. So let's break that into smaller parts. It is large. It is not short. Not 2 minutes. It can be 20, 30, or even 40 minutes long. It's a big piece. And it is for orchestra. That means strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion playing together. Every instrument together. And it has several movements. Movement means a big section of a piece. And after each movement, there's a pause. First movement, second movement, third movement, and fourth movement. So you can think of each movement like a chapter in a book or a scene in a movie. Okay? So let's talk about the structure of a symphony. In the classical period, many symphonies have 4 movements. So, a very basic plan for each movement. First movement is usually fast. And second movement is usually slow. And third movement has a character, usually a dance, like a minuet and trio, and go back to minuet like this. And fourth movement is usually fast and usually faster than the first movement, and it has energetic ending. Okay? So you can imagine it like this. First movement is like an introduction. Hello, this is my main idea, da 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 da. And second movement is like more calm and lyrical. So it's like thinking or dreaming in slow tempo. And third movement, it's a dance, like minuet. So it's like a party or dance, a bit playful but medium fast. Usually 3 times, like 3-4 time. And fourth movement is a finale. So it's a big, exciting ending fast. Because a symphony is written for orchestra, let's quickly remember the 4 main families of instruments. We have strings, like violins, violas, cellos, and double bass. And usually the violins are divided into the first violins and the second violins. In the woodwind section, we have flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons and stuff. And the brass section, we have French horns, trumpets, trombones later, and so on. And percussion, we have timpani and sometimes others. In the later period, like Romantic period, they have more percussion instruments like a bass drum, they have cymbals, Okay, so in the classical period, like composer like Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven wrote symphonies mainly for this kind of orchestra. People often call Haydn the father of the symphony. Why? Because he wrote over 100 symphonies. So he basically helped to shape the symphony as a genre. The four movement plan, the use of orchestra, the balance and structure we now think of as classical. Okay, so when we study the symphony in the classical period, we must talk about Haydn. So usually it is known that Haydn composed 106 symphonies or more. Haydn composed 104 numbered symphony and two more, and people talk about like there can be more. Okay, so today we'll listen to one of his symphonies and try to feel the character of a symphony, the different movements and its character, and the balance of classical style. Symphony number 6, Le Matin, which means the morning in French, is one of the first symphonies Haydn wrote after he started working for Prince Esterhazy. In this piece, there are many solo parts for different instruments because Haydn wanted to show off the excellent players in the Esterhazy orchestra. Let's listen to each movement and write down everything you notice about the tempo, character, and anything else you can feel. The first movement starts with a slow instruction that paints a picture of sunrise, then a medium fast allegro in 3/4 time with some solo parts. Second movement is a slow movement with beautiful solos for violin and cello. The third movement is a minuet dance, graceful with some playful solo moments in the trio. The fourth movement is a grand finale, so allegro with solos here and there, a big energetic ending. In our next class, we'll explore more of Haydn's contributions to classical music. String quartets, a small symphony with 4 string players, and the oratorio, big vocal works, sometimes like an opera without staging. So, we started today with the big public piece, the symphony, and next time we will see how the classical style appears in the smaller groups and vocal music too. We'll see how Haydn applied the classical principles across different musical formats, from intimate chamber works to grand vocal compositions. Good job today, everyone. See you next time.